All right, Doc, we are back in Santa Monica. This is our favorite city, Ask the Doc. Before we get started, I want to bring something up that you told me at lunch because it's really exciting. You got a book coming out soon, and I know it's not out yet, but I just want you to talk just for a few seconds about it. What's going on, and when is that coming out? What's going to be in it?
Well, yeah, you say soon. I guess in the book world, soon is within a year or so's time. But yeah, we don't plan to publish until at least May 2022. But yeah, thanks for bringing it up.
Oh, 2022?
Long runway.
I thought this coming May.
Yeah, no, I was saying the manuscript is due in a month.
Okay.
And that's just the way it works from what I understand. And the good news is we get the time up until the end of the year to tweak it, because you think, a year is a long time, especially in medicine, for things to change.
Yes.
So we'll be able to update it and tweak it and whatnot. But yeah, thank you for the plug.
What made you decide to write a book at this point?
So much of what we do here can be done elsewhere, I guess is one way to put it. And people think that because, I was telling you during lunch, a very large percentage of my practice is law enforcement. But we also have a lot of, Hollywood celebs and people that are very well heeled here in Los Angeles. We're in a zip code that requires a pretty hefty rent, so we charge a lot. So I guess that people think that means everything we do here is high end, and some of it is, but because we don't deal with insurance, we're more free to exclude ourselves from the business of medicine and treat people the way we want to. So the idea was, one, to present some of these, I hate to call them alternative treatments, but they end up being alternative treatments because, again, they're not covered by most health maintenance organizations, but also to show that there's ways around the expensive ways. For example, we have the luxury of a wonderful cryotherapy machine here. U.S. Cryotherapy makes it. It's almost $300,000 machine.
Wow.
And the beauty is you can get in and out in 3 minutes, 30 seconds to get a treatment. That's not as easy as stopping at the gas station on the way home and getting 60 pounds of ice that you can throw in the tub and sitting there for, no more than 20 minutes, but not 3.5 minutes. But same idea in terms of it's cryotherapy treatment. You don't need to have to shell out, $40 a treatment. I think I was paying close to maybe $10 for ice at those gas stations, and then I finally decided to get an ice maker through Amazon for whatever it is, a couple $100, and now I'm set at home because I can't come in here. I don't want to come all the way from Malibu just to get 3.5 minutes of cryotherapy. So the idea of the book was to show what's available now that most people won't necessarily hear about because it's not part of the business of medicine.
Gotcha.
And also show ways that you can get it done wherever you might be, in Ohio or Dubai or anywhere in the world.
That's awesome. Well, you're gonna have to keep us posted. This is I thought when you said May, I thought this May, so I'm a little bit ahead of myself.
Thank you.
I just still wanted to put it out there because I think a lot of people will be interested in knowing what you have to say and what you have to write about. So we'll keep you guys posted, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So what do we got today?
First question.
Computer's working now, or no?
Sort of, yeah. But I'll read this first one off my iPhone since I'm not sure what's going on with this. This is a fellow, I believe, says, hello, first I want to say thanks for all the YouTube videos. They are very beneficial. I have a condition called Steinerism. I'm not sure if it has another name. Its name was derived from the wrestler Scott Steiner. Real quick, I've been training with weights for well over 30 years. I'm currently 49 years old. In the last 4 years, my left pec has changed shape immensely. It's as if the muscle is just disappearing. There seems to be a very small amount of pain associated, but no blood or bruising like a pec tear. It is very unsightly and disheartening to say the least. I've reached out to many for info with no success. No one seems to know exactly the cause, and certainly no one knows of how to fix it. I'm not sure if training chest makes it worse. I do know of another person about my age, and his condition is even worse. The info I collected says it's possibly a nerve issue that's causing the muscle to morph. My question would be if you have any helpful info on this condition, and or do you think it's possible if BPC157 can be helpful? Thanks in advance, Dan. Dan, and everyone else out there who has him or herself or has a friend. I have a really good friend who is a patient who has suffered from this for a while and has been lifting probably for very similar to Dan here for a long time. A competitive bodybuilder, has a pro card, and is also in the medical business. I don't want to give too much more information so people don't figure out who this is. But a super nice guy. And by the way, I have yet to see this condition in girls. But we've tried a lot. Go ahead.
Maybe they wouldn't tell you. Girls have a little bit more.
Yeah, and of course, when we're talking about pectoral muscle, you've got breast tissue overlapping, so you might not notice it as well. But still, I think you're going to notice it, particularly in the bodybuilding community. But I have heard of no females with this condition. But with this particular patient to whom I'm referring, we've tried everything. I have no idea what's going on with this. I have theories like everyone else probably has theories, but we've tried peptides, including BPC157, TB500 or thymosin beta 4. And not only have I tried things, but other physicians, and I've kept apprised of what the other physician has done. Even more peptides that I'm comfortable using without enough information to go on. I mean, we've used dermal fillers, which is only to act as really a cosmetic for the condition, not to help it. We've used stem cells, without success.
Wow.
And what that tells me is, and I think Dan references this, it's more than likely a nerve condition, because if it were not, you would think stem cells would regenerate tissue in the area. I mean, that's what these cells are meant to do. And it doesn't appear to be inflammatory in nature. It seems to be just chronic loss of tissue, insidious chronic loss of tissue. So the theory that I have, and I'm not alone, I'm sure, is that, and I've asked this particular patient, hey, have you done some body work in the area of the scalenes and, scalenes and the clavicle? Because through the scalenes passes the brachial plexus, and underneath the clavicle passes the nerve, which eventually branches off into the lateral pectoral and the medial pectoral nerve, which innervate this area. And this particular gentleman said, oh, yeah, I hate it. It's really, really painful when they work on there, but I've had it done before. I submit that it's possible that some of these really big guys, because it's not your average Joe. We were talking about this at lunch, right? It's usually guys that are really well-developed or almost, overdeveloped who develop the condition. And it could be that the nerve gets impinged upon. And, athletes in general, but bodybuilders too, will work through things. I don't think I have the impingement, although I have tight scalenes, as do a lot of people. But everyone's a little different in what gets crushed and what they feel and don't feel. But athletes and bodybuilders and whatnot tend to sort of work through pain.
Yeah, right.
A lot of people have shoulder issues. I would say just about anybody who's athletic, and certainly anybody who works out with weights, has typically one or both arms that you've got some sort of tendinosis, if not tendinitis, right? Meaning some long-term or short-term inflammation of the tendons, particularly the bicep tendon. The SLAP2 tear is one of the most common tears out there, and people can work through it. So a lot of guys, in other words, might be just going, oh yeah, this is that same old, and working through it, instead of doing some work to loosen up the scalenes, free up those nerves. And the thing is, we talk about double crush syndrome sometimes, not necessarily in relationship to this particular condition, but where you've got two places on which the nerve is being impinged. And I use the garden hose analogy. If you step on one piece of garden hose, it can adjust the flow a little bit. If you've got it turned on, so I say full blast. If you step on two, it's much more significant. And I forget what the physics involved is, but the bottom line is, in the human body, one place of impingement where it exits the scalene and people go, it's a little painful, I don't really notice a big difference. But two places where it comes through the scalene and then, sub to the clavicle, or then some other area where the muscle's too tight, you might have this issue where with or without pain, the flow, the electrical flow to the muscle is not there anymore. Again, I'm just riffing here. I don't have an answer, but that's the best thing I can come up with. And it's based upon an N of 1 where I've tried to help with my friend and patient without success using other ideas as to what it might be. This particular patient went through extensive testing.
MRI and all that stuff? Or?
Well, as well as muscle biopsy, nerve conduction velocity studies, EMG studies. So all of them were negative. So this is what's left for this particular gentleman. And maybe that's the same for Dan. And I would, I'd love to hear more from guys out there who maybe will pursue this. Worst case scenario is, you loosen up your scalenes, which most athletes, particularly weightlifters, have. I mean, whether you're just doing curls, and holding the weight that way, or you're doing overhead presses, your scalenes connect to your first and second ribs, and it's a common condition to have those too tight. And often so tight that it brings up the rib to crimp a nerve and can cause a lot of pain. So anyway, the point is, whether you have Steinerism or not, well, in our case, we're talking about people with Steinerism, it'd be worth it, because if nothing else, you'll be better for the deep tissue massage. But let's see if it, I can't say if it would necessarily reverse the condition or even stop it, but the idea would be at least you would slow it. You would stop continually hammering the nerve, relieve the pressure on the nerve if that's what's going on here. In the case of where most guys are seeing that that deficit occur, I think that would be the lateral pectoral nerve that's involved. But anyway, it all comes off the brachial plexus up here, and eventually the nerves therefrom. So it's worth a shot. I wish I had more for you, but that's the best that I know of with Steinerism. And I did do some research on this one beforehand, because you sent me the questions, I think, day before yesterday. So that's the best I could come up with.
Yeah. Thanks, Doc. Doc.
Second one starts, my boyfriend stopped taking, this must mean testosterone and anthate, 1 year and 3 months ago. He had Nolvadex at home for post-cycle therapy, but never took it. But instead, he took less and less testosterone instead, further apart. He skipped taking the PCT this time, since the first time he did it after his cycle, he experienced depression afterwards. But this time, he has not felt bad at all. He took the testosterone and anthate for more than a year the last time. Let me just stop there and say, this is not unusual. When we talk about post-cycle therapy in guys that don't really need testosterone replacement therapy, these are younger guys that are using it to, for athleticism and stuff like that, and presumably have, I hate to say normal, but let's call it optimal levels of testosterone to begin with. The post-cycle therapy, the idea of getting the testicles up and running again in advance of coming off testosterone, just sort of smooths out that drop that can occur. But if you want the most efficient, most fast method of getting your testicles up and running again after a cycle where they've been presumably shut down from the use of exogenous substances, man, just go cold turkey. Because as soon as your pituitary recognizes that you don't have enough testosterone, it's going to start screaming vis-a-vis luteinizing hormone at your testicles to get working. But the analogy I use is the pituitary works like a gas engine and the testicles like a diesel engine. Sometimes it takes a while for those testicles to get up and running again. So post-cycle therapy, particularly if it's something like HCG engaged before, 3 to 6 weeks before you stop using testosterone, helps get your testicles up and running so that there's a smoother transition. When they get screamed at, they start working right away rather than, clearing their eyes and waiting to get started again. So that's not unusual that he cruised through that step. Sometimes when, and she doesn't mention what the PCT was, except for some Nolvadex at least one time, but oftentimes with Clomid, because it's got two isomers, zuclomiphene and enclomiphene, the zuclomiphene of which we think is the problem, guys get side effects that make you feel kind of moody, irascible, and depressed. Ditto for HCG, where you're going to get some production of estrogen, even if you're using an aromatase inhibitor, that you can't help because it's happening right there at the testicular level, if you will. So that excess estrogen can make you depressed, moody, irascible. So that's not unusual to see that. I just want to say that before I lose track and continue with the question here. She goes on to say that his sex drive is not normal after this. She says it's non-existent. And we have been trying to conceive for 8 months. Could the lack of PCT still cause the testes to not produce testosterone, FSH, LH, etc. on its own? He is only 28 years old. Okay, real quick. No. Again, he's probably up and running. The only way we know for sure, though, is to test. And remember, guys, this is all, I'm just riffing here with general information without having specifics. I can't tell you for sure. Don't take this as a consultation or anything like that. But typically, especially being 28 years old, and if assuming that this was, even if it wasn't this gentleman's first cycle, we don't know, I guess, how long he was on it, but even if he was on the cycle for a long time, 28 years old, your body bounces back pretty easily. In terms of evolution, your number one goal is to reproduce at that age still. So, presumably, things are up and running again. It is a presumption, though, and you should still take the assays to make sure. She goes on to say he is a bodybuilder training very hard and goes to the gym 5 times a week, has gained muscle mass and strength since he stopped, and feels the strongest ever at the gym. Well, that goes to what I just said. So probably his endogenous production is up to where it should be and then some, maybe. He says he has to be producing testosterone to be able to work out like he is doing very hard and to still get the results. I agree. Is it too late to take Novadex, tamoxifen now as post-psychotherapy? What would be the point? It sounds like everything's up and running again. You could argue maybe that use of a little bit of tamoxifen could increase his own production even more because of the way that's intended to work, by blocking the body's reception, if you will, of estrogen. It feels more comfortable, the pituitary, to send a signal to the testicles to produce perhaps even more testosterone. There's no restriction on that because of excess estrogen. So maybe it could help, but not in the sense I think she's asking in terms of, okay, do we need PCT? And should we kick it in now?
Yeah.
The body, as I said earlier, has already screamed at the testicles to get going 8 months ago easily. And if things are working normally like I expect, then this is long gone the need for any post-psychotherapy. She says to get the sex drive back and also fertility that I think is affected too. Thank you for spreading this information that is hard to get help with. Wish you all the best. From Sweden, Malika.
Yeah, nice.
So I kept interjecting there so I wouldn't lose track, but I don't really have much to add to that except to say, it'd be interesting to see what the semen analysis shows, to see what fertility is at this point. Obviously, check FSH, LH, testosterone free and total to see what's going on. Sex drive back, we don't know. Well, I don't want to assume anything, but are you still taking something to block estrogen? Sometimes if you oversuppress estrogen, you'll lose sensation in the genitalia. You'll lose your libido therewith or therefore, arguably. If everything is working the way it should, as she's assuming, the sex drive should be back. There are a lot of things that affect libido, though. But again, if we get the labs, which should include estradiol sensitive, preferably even estrone in a sensitive manner, liquid chromatography, mass spec, so that we have a precise enough number for it to be accurate, because that might be out of whack. We could evaluate some of these things and adjust. Maybe he's not aromatizing as much testosterone, and that balance, that ratio of testosterone to estrogen's off. There's a lot of different explanations. No mention of erectile function or dysfunction, just seems to be libido. So we need some more information, but those are the assays that would be worth looking into. And again, I guess some of the easy questions are, post-psychotherapy opportunity long gone, not necessary is a better way to put it. You might get something out of tamoxifen because of the age and maybe increase things a little bit more, meaning testosterone production. But you got to be careful with that you don't block too much estrogen. A better choice might be worth considering in clomiphene, just sort of a side note. And then she mentions fertility. Let's get a semen analysis and see where we stand, but that'll give you more information.
Nice. Thanks, Doc. All right, Doc. What else we got?
Well, next question says, hi, Dr. Rand. I've heard that testosterone doses of more than 100 milligrams a week can cause cardiomyopathy and left ventricular hypertrophy when used long term. Is there any truth to it in your experience? Regards, Andy. This can be a short answer. No. I don't know where this stuff comes from. I suppose that if you have hypertension and it's uncontrolled, will testosterone use necessarily make it worse? Probably not at that dose, because that's typically underdosed. The idea being here to make something out of this question, what causes the hypertrophy in that left ventricle, the increased size of the muscle, is having to work too hard because you've got so much blood pressure, too much, that the muscle, in order to get that same stroke volume out or just to get anything out with that much pressure, requires more effort. And so your body, just like any other muscle, says, okay, got to build up a little bit more. Problem is, in the same way that, if you build up a bicep too much, it restricts your motion. Same thing, if the walls get too thick, it doesn't work as well. You don't get as much of an ejection fraction, we call it, and that can cause eventually heart failure. But that's a problem really more with high blood pressure that goes uncontrolled than testosterone use. Testosterone use in and of itself won't do that to your heart. Testosterone is good for the heart, just like it is for most muscles, in the sense that, again, I always use the word leverage. Testosterone leverages the good things you do. It doesn't cause problems, at least in TRT dosages. That is safe to say. And 100 milligrams a week, again, is a light dose. So I would say, again, I'm not sure where you're drawing this conclusion, but even if you had uncontrolled hypertension, I don't think that dose would necessarily leverage the building up of the ventricular wall, leading to any form of cardiomyopathy. So I would say the answer is no. But what you want to look into is the root of the problem. Do you have, what's causing the cardiomyopathy? What's causing the left ventricular hypertrophy? Remember, too, again, to make more out of this question, there is some left ventricular hypertrophy associated with just being an athlete. Mm-hmm. Typically, I think it's within 3 to 5 millimeters max enlarged heart, this left ventricular hypertrophy, just because the muscle is adapting to positive things like having to get a lot of stroke volume out to the muscles because you're working hard as an athlete. Mm-hmm. That's very different than more of the sick heart, where that hypertrophy is due to the high blood pressure. It's kind of like you can get an increase in red blood cell count, hemoglobin, hematocrit from either riding your bike uphill for 6 hours a day, exercising your muscles and your wind, so to speak, or you can do that through uncontrolled sleep apnea, untreated sleep apnea. The former being good, but the second not so good. But the same result is to see an elevation in red blood cell count, hemoglobin, hematocrit. So left ventricular hypertrophy in and of itself, as long as it's in that window of, I think it's 3 to 5 millimeters, isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I'm assuming he's talking about the pathology here. And again, testosterone is not causing the pathology.
Yeah, great. I'm glad for that question, actually. Thanks, Doc.